Hey everybody, Kathy here, your Mani Maniac, back to share with you another Mani that I did. If you haven't seen my unboxing video for the March Sparkle & Co. Subscription bag, that is what we're using today. Gonna use some super fun sun change color with a little hint of a temperature change color as an accent. I'm gonna show you how to do it. This is what we're gonna do. Looks super simple, really beautiful, just a soft pink with a touch of sparkle. I'm gonna show you how to do it right now. Let's go. All right, guys, let's get started on this really beautiful, simple Mani. I've already prepped these nails. I've done 2 coats of just my clear Dip 90 Sparkle & Co. That just gives me a nice base. I know I've mentioned before, there are lots of ways that you can take these off, soaking them in acetone. I like to use my electric file to take off as much as I can, and then I'll soak it off every, once a month or something like that. So I don't have to put my hands in acetone quite as much. So that just gives me a nice base. Again, I'm using the Sparkle & Co. liquid, so I started with a pH prep, and then I use the base bond, which is step number 2. Base bond for Sparkle & Co. with that Dip 90. So we're gonna just continue on with the base bond. And we're doing a ombre here today on our pointer finger, but this middle finger we're gonna do a straight dip into Peekaboo, which is a sun changing color. So that is lots of fun. These are the awesome colors we got in our subscription box this month. So just a nice even coat of our base bond, and we've got that Peekaboo on there. So we're gonna go for our ombre. Again, for the ombre, I'm using just, this is like a $3 e.l.f. Eyeshadow brush that I got at Target. And then I'm gonna be using my scoop to scoop, and I've got a little container here that I'm catching that Peekaboo in, because we're gonna do the Dip 56, all that shimmers across the top as an ombre, and then we're gonna put the Peekaboo over to cover anything that didn't get the all that shimmers on it. It gives us just a nice, very, very mild, almost French look, kind of like an American French manicure, or baby boomer, as they say, French manicure, which is more of like an ombre French instead of a straight line typical French manicure. So we're just gonna do all that shimmers over the top here. Just, you wanna roll your finger back and forth as you tap that on so you get it on both sides. Then we're gonna take a scoop of the Peekaboo and just sprinkle that over the top of the rest of the nail so that it can stick to any of the base bond that is still exposed. So that way we get a nice coverage. And then once we dust this off and put that, put the solidify and the glossy coat, it'll look more like these here. You'll be able to see that all that shimmers kind of on the top edge there. All right, so let's go back to our solid Peekaboo nail. What we're gonna do is we're gonna be putting the temperature changer, April showers, bring May flowers over top of that. So not only is it gonna change colors in the sun because Peekaboo is underneath, it is also gonna be changing when it's hot or cold. So just gonna give these a little dust since they've had a minute to set here. You don't wanna dust them off too quickly because you wanna give that base bond a minute to set and dry. So we're just gonna get a nice thin, even coat. You wanna get as close to the cuticle and the sidewalls as you can, but not actually on them. That will help prevent lifting from happening. All right, so it's gonna go straight into the April showers, bring May flowers, which you can see in the jar, it looks purple. That's because it's cold. But if you look on my finger, it's white. So you can see the Peekaboo through it. We're gonna do one more coat of our ombre on top here. So we'll just do a nice thin, even coat of that base bond, again, all the way to the edges, but don't flood that cuticle or the sidewalls. You wanna keep those nice and clean, nice and thin coat there. And we're gonna go ahead again with this ombre right over the top and I'm just holding my brush right at the edge. So I'm just kind of catching the edge of that nail and rolling back and forth so you can see that I'll get all the way to each of the edges. And then quickly we're going to pop on this Peekaboo. You want to work fairly quickly when you are working with the base bond, which is a resin glue, so it does dry pretty quickly. I will put a link up to my video where I use gel liquids to put on the powder, which works phenomenally. The great thing about doing that is because you have to cure the gel, you have kind of a couple minutes to clean it up if you need to. You need to be a little more precise again with the resin because it does dry more quickly and doesn't need to be cured, so of course it's going to dry and that's how it gets hard. So you can check that out. There are a lot of people who have reactions to the liquids, the dip liquids. They are kind of strong smelling, so I can see that that does happen to me sometimes. I've got pretty bad allergies, so once in a while I do get kind of a little bit of a reaction. You get like a stuffy nose and kind of feel like you have maybe a cold or the flu or something, and they kind of call it nail flu. So I have used the gel liquids before, which helps that so I don't get that. But you know, just depending on how I'm feeling, I do find the dip liquids to last longer. I will say they are harder when they are finished. So even though you cure the gel, it still does sometimes kind of chip off a little bit faster, in my opinion, than the dip liquids do. So we're gonna go ahead with step number 3 over top. Now we've got all the liquids on. Actually, real quickly before we do that, I'm gonna put just another coat of clear dip over top. I like to do this so that when I file or buff my nails, I'm not buffing off any of the color or the shimmer or glitter or whatever we're working with. So that's just gonna go into just my clear dip. And again, that's just gonna give us some space to buff and get the perfect shape that we want if we do need to fix that. So just gives it a nice barrier there. A little bit more here. Try and get it even. So we're gonna need to buff now because you can see I've got that little spot right there. So I will need to buff that out, which is the exact reason why we're doing this clear coat. So none of that color is gonna come off. If we did buff it right over top, we'd probably end up buffing off most of that April showers, Bring May flowers, then we wouldn't get that change with the temperature change, which the dip 45 or subscription dip 45 is. So all right, so now that we've got those on there and they are topped with clear so they're nice and protected, which I've done on all these other nails, so you can see, you'll be able to see right through it. We're gonna give this a nice coat of Solidify. And you know, don't be shy with this coat of Solidify because you want it to harden up. So we're gonna give that just a quick second here before we start buffing out those, any spots that we see, anything that's uneven. You always wanna look at your nails from all different perspectives. So when we are filing, we wanna, you know, we wanna make this cuticle edge and the sidewall edges a nice slope. So your natural nail slopes down into those areas, right? So your cuticle is here, your natural nail kind of slopes down into that. So we wanna mimic that with the dip. We don't want it to be a real hard, large edge because that can get caught on things once it starts to grow out and push away from the cuticle. So we're gonna go ahead and take our buffer, and I'm just gonna kind of go on the sides here and just buff that down a little bit. You can use an e-file for this. Sometimes I do, just depends on how I'm feeling. I have that little bump right there, so I'm gonna wanna buff that out. I find when I'm working with these lighter colors, I don't like to use the e-file quite as much because I do end up getting, which I used it on here and you can see, I do end up kind of getting these spots where it pulls off all the color. You know, you just move too quickly or something like that, and those e-files are powerful. And with the bits on them, you know, you got a medium grit type file on there, and it really can take off a lot of the dip at once, even though that's not what you intended. All right, so we're making these side walls. That's gonna be our first priority when we're filing. And then like I said, you wanna look at it from all perspectives. So you wanna turn your nail and look at it from the side and make sure that it's sloped right. You don't have anywhere divots. I do that because if I run my finger over it and it's lumpy, it will really bother me. So I want to make sure that that part is super duper smooth. You want to look at it this way also and just make sure it looks how you want it to look. So just getting a nice file on there. If you have shaped your nails, a lot of times because the dip gets kind of thick, it can lose that shape. So I will go over it with a file. I've kind of filed into sort of a semi ballerina or coffin shape here because I cut down my nails a while ago, so they are pretty short. But if I go through and do this now, then once I put that glossy coat on, it won't get ruined. If I wait until I've got the glossy coat on, it can pull some of that off. Sorry, I've got a little just cuticle piece there. So that one is done. So we'll move on to this one. We're gonna do same thing, sidewall cuticle edges first. Just get those nice and smooth and kind of sloping into that sidewall or cuticle area as your natural nail would, so they don't catch on anything later. And I buff out the whole thing. Look at it this way, looks good. This way, looks pretty good. Just make sure these sides, run my finger over it, it's not lumpy, so that's good. Just check our shape, last thing here. A real quick fine tune of that shape. Okay, so we'll dust those off real good, and then we're gonna go in with our second coat of Solidify. So this second coat of Solidify is doing two things. It's gonna make sure that that dip is rock solid, so it's nice and hard. And then also the Solidify is what's gonna help the glossy coat on top dry. If you don't have Solidify, you don't use Solidify, say you skip it all together and try putting the glossy coat, it's gonna act like a base bond because it is a resin as well. So what's gonna end up happening is it's not gonna dry and it's gonna be tacky, and you don't want it to be tacky because then it doesn't dry right. Kind of gets spots. It'll be glossy in some spots and matte in some spots, and it just ends up kind of looking really strange. So all right, so we've got that Solidify on there. Just give it a quick minute to dry. And then the glossy coat we're gonna do twice as usual. So we'll put our first glossy coat on top here. And that is, doesn't always appear super glossy right at the beginning. The second coat will give us that gloss. This is the first coat here. So that kind of does tend to matte out a little bit. You can see as it dries, it looks a little more matte than glossy. We're gonna give that probably at least 20 to 30 seconds to get a little bit dry. And again, it is a resin just like the base bond is, so it does dry fairly quickly. But that's part of what I love about it, because we're gonna pop this second glossy coat right on top, and this is gonna be dry in about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes tops. We'll be ready to walk away and get stuff done for the day. So there you have it. We've got a sun changing and temperature changing manicure here. So I've got that April showers bring May flowers is kind of just an accent, which you'll only be able to see when it's cold. So let me grab my Starbucks here, and I'm gonna hold that so you can see it's clear when it's warm. But if I put it to the cold here, we're gonna get a purple color to it. So let me just give that a minute. You can see. Hopefully it'll turn. This coffee has been sitting out for a little while, so it might not be, but I don't have any ice because I'm in a hotel room. So you can see it kind of started to turn. It'll get more like this purple here when it's cold. But of course, being on your fingers, it doesn't always turn that unless you're outside and your hands get really cold. You can see it's going back to the clear version now as my fingers warm up. So if you have longer nails, the cool thing is if it's a little bit cool outside, the tips will kind of start to turn that purple color or whatever the color change is. So it kind of gives you an ombre without even trying, which is kind of really fun. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and push my table here and see if I can catch some of this sunlight. Oh, it's not gonna reach, so move over here so you can see. Already. So you can see the Peekablues on all my fingers are pink. We go into the sun and look at them change. Check that out. So under this April showers bring May flowers is Peekablu, so that's what's turning blue under there. And then if I also was cold and in the sun, then it would get even a different, it would look more purple, because that April showers bring May flowers would be that cool purple color on top. So there you have it, sun changing and temperature changing mani. Awesome products from Sparkle & Co. This month's subscription bag was amazing. I'm totally in love with it. I hope they come up with more sun changers because I love them. They're so much fun. Check out the card in the top corner there so that you can see the unboxing of this month's Sparkle & Co. subscription bag. Just totally beautiful manicure. I'm so in love with it. Thanks for watching. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Mani Maniac. As always, please make sure if you have any ideas for upcoming videos, please comment down below. Tell me what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see. I've got some cool videos coming up. We're going to try a marbling technique with dip powder coming up. That's going to be super cool, and some more adventures in stamping. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below and the little bell for notifications so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And as always, all the information you need on everything I used in today's video, as well as all the info on the Sparkle & Co. Referral program, is all down in the show description. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's content. Well, we'll see you next time on the Mani Maniac.